Hello? Hello, hello? I don't hear anybody. Hello?
Technology.
Well, now, can you hear us now?
Yep.
There we go.
Okay. Three clicks, that's all it took.
Won't forget it in 2 weeks.
I think Kimberly's trying to sign in too.
No, I'm here. I think that's my home computer. I just texted Andrew to close the window.
Okay.
Okay, all right, you're there. I can tell.
How about you, Julie?
Yeah, I went up to, Greenlee. I was 100% up there.
Yeah, we were over in Vermont, 100%. So that was, yeah, it
This
was,
is pretty cool.
yeah, that was so worth,
It's amazing. It was worth it.
worth the 6.5 hour drive last night.
Yeah.
The traffic was incredible.
We were up, at Dover Foxcroft, it was where it was 100%, but and as we were leaving, everybody was going one way, and so we went the other way, which was about 20% longer, but it was completely traffic free.
Wow.
I did that also, because I wanted to take my friend to the Solon Meeting House, and everybody went right and you went left, and
That's great.
this took us the same amount of time.
Yeah.
Well, I think this is all we have. I know,
Okay,
Lynn Greiger isn't gonna be able to make it. Hans is, I think, driving the school bus, so he'd probably come in, he'd typically come in a few minutes later than us.
Okay.
So I think this is what we've got. Did everybody get Paul's minutes? And have a chance to review them?
Yes.
Another excellent job. You know,
Yes.
Paul, thank you very much again. We're gonna say this every meeting, that you do a great job.
Okay. It might
It
go to my
really
head.
helps us when we look back and see what we said and how it was done. So,
well, I think there was one change. You're listed as being in the meeting and you were
That's
not.
the only thing I noticed is that all committee members and I wasn't here or on Zoom.
Yeah,
That was the only thing I
so
noticed.
that's the only thing.
Okay. You were
So-
on. All right, well, I'll change that.
So I moved to accept the minutes, as amended.
do I hear a second?
I'll second it.
All in favor? All
Aye.
approved? Yeah.
Got it.
Chris, you wanna?
Yeah.
Take it from here and.
Yeah.
Before we get into the business, of the day, could you tell us a little bit about what's up with Mike Barrett? Is he?
Yeah, yeah.
Seriously ill or what's?
No, yeah, Mike called me this week and said, he just is kind of run out of gas. He's been up so long, you know, he's really, just needs to step aside. And so I've got a card for us to sign.
Yeah, why don't you just,
Just circulate
circulate
that,
it, we'll,
circulate it as we go, and then I'll send it to Mike. I've already informed the town
Okay,
and Mike and send him a couple of emails on it, so.
okay.
So does that mean we need to elect a new vice chair?
New vice chair.
person?
We need a new vice chair, right?
We can do it this meeting, or we can do it next meeting. We probably need someone to be nominated.
That was the man that
Volunteer.
had Foster.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah, he's been very active, in
Town,
the town forever, so. He's certainly has mobility problems.
Yeah, I think that was it, just the, it was. Regarding a new vice chair, do we have anybody who wants to volunteer now, or do you wanna think about it over this meeting?
I think Lenny would be a perfect choice.
I guess I've been around for the longest
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
I agree, excellent
Who wants
choice.
to? Would you like to take, be vice chair, Lenny?
Fine. Well, the vice, as we know, the vice chair doesn't have anything to do, so might as well.
Yes.
Perfect role.
Well, you-
There's no-
Well, I think you'll be grooming yourself.
Well, think of something.
Yeah,
I think you're being optimistic, that's,
Okay,
so we need a motion for Lenny to go as vice chair.
A motion that Lenny be our vice chair.
All those approved? Yes,
second.
all approved,
All
done.
right,
Right.
Unanimous,
Thank
even
you,
Lenny
Lenny.
voted.
great.
We're recording, right?
Yes,
Okay.
Lenny's last name should be in the record.
Any other things before we start? No, okay. I'd circulated this document, discussion topics for today, and, there's a lot of them on here. I did not put them down in any specific order. They, so I guess and Pat and I talked a little bit about how to proceed, and we were thinking that we would, when we get to something that sounds like we're gelling on a change to the ordinance, then we would vote on it as a committee, as the entire committee, to see if we want to put it forward as a recommendation from the committee. Does that seem like a good procedural?
You mean like one item at a time?
Well, I think when we go through septic and we have one or two things that we want to recommend be adopted as a change to the shoreline zoning ordinance, then we would vote on the one or two items in that,
Yeah.
you know.
It would
and
show us our progress too.
and would also, I mean, we could go back and revisit something and say, well, what if we did this too? I think we could do that, but I'd see a series of meetings where we're trying to coalesce around a list of changes in plain English that we would that we would all, well, we might not all agree on them, but we would have voted and the committee, this would be what the committee would want to put forward as recommendations. And then I think we would, then we'd have to find out what the next procedural step is to move those forward, which I'm a little fuzzy on that. That might be something where an attorney writes up ordinance language, or would be Kennebec Valley Council of Governments, you know, gives us a recommendation. I'm not sure what that next step is, but I think we can, and this is all for discussion, I don't know. Does anybody know what that next step would be offhand?
You know, my understanding of what I was told was just coming in was just that this committee is gonna come up with recommendations that would then be presented to the board,
The select
the
board?
select board,
Okay,
and then the select board would take it from there.
okay.
That was my understanding. But of course, you know, I could be wrong.
I think it goes to the planning board first.
And maybe there was
Yeah,
that
right.
step in between,
And
right?
then the planning, then the, select board.
Yeah, and in our experience, there's a bit of back and forth with the select board. And there may in fact be, we've never dealt directly with the planning board. There may also be some back and forth with the planning board in the sense that, well, just speaking about the select board, they'll say, well, you know, we like this part and we don't like that part. Why don't you go and modify it in this sort of way and come back? And so then we'll go and work on it some more and then, you know, maybe after 2 more meetings, come back with a revised version and get their take on it again. And then we work on it until everybody's kind of in agreement, and then you go to the attorney and, you know, get the thing written up.
So that procedure is with the planning board?
No, well, we don't have any experience dealing with the planning board in the
Okay.
past. It was just with the select
With the
board.
select board?
Yeah.
Didn't George Seal sort of lay it out? I gotta go back over his memo to us or his letter to us? How it goes?
I would have to review that again.
I think you're right, Paul, that, he did, it was in an email, maybe from you.
I copied it in my comments, but I don't know where that is right now.
Yes, I've got it right here. It says,
Because we're working for the select board.
Yes, correct.
They
we're
want to share with.
appointed by the select board, but George Seal said that, this, let's see,
I mean, there's a number of there's public hearings.
yeah,
After,
it's,
you know, there's a whole process that,
right, there is, planning board will play an important role in that they will discuss our suggestions and vote on them, and then there is town attorney review, multiple select board reviews and approvals, public hearings, DEP review and approval, and citizen vote. So,
That's a lot of hoops.
oh, it is, I
It
mean,
is.
yeah, you don't
Yeah.
change the ordinances lightly, I guess.
Well, some of that, I mean, like, is specific to it's being shoreline zone.
Right,
Because DEP doesn't get involved unless it's shoreline zone.
Right.
It's-
right. But everything
Chris-
else,
Chris, I really, you know, admire what you've been doing in getting this whole organization, but it seems from my point of view that our work is fact-finding. You know, for me that we should continue to be having people come before us with the experts in this, because we're all lay people.
right, no, I agree, Paul,
So what can we do? So what is the plan in the process? I don't understand what your idea is like for today.
well, what I would, do is discuss the list of discussion topics and, amongst ourselves, decide what needs to be delved into deeper, what is a non-starter, perhaps, you know, from this, committee's opinion. And that, you know, that's, that may, I mean, that might require a vote to say, we strike this is not something we want to go in the direction of. But just to go through this, and then we can start to get into, you know, we had a fairly deep discussion on septic systems. So maybe that's not the first thing we do, because we've already touched on that. But then I would say we get some, experts, quote unquote, experts for a next meeting where we will address a few of these items and other ones that come up. Does that sound like it makes sense? I'm looking back at you up at the,
Yeah,
over there, so,
I'm looking over your shoulder.
right. So, what do you think about that? Does that seem like it makes sense, the direction?
I think it makes sense that maybe in this meeting, we prioritize our focus. And we agree what jumps out at all of us as to, you know, where we want to put our energy. But I think there's a lot of and I think we need to line up a program of people coming before us and, you know, deal with it by subject matter or section. And that's how I saw it, but I'm just one member.
Okay. Other comments on what we, on this list and
Well, one point you made in just now, talking with Paul, I think one thing we might do is go down the list right now and see if there are certain things here that are, as you call them, non-starters. That it's just really kind of out of the realm of what shoreline zoning restrictions reasonably could be. For example, noise restrictions within the shoreline zone. Is that something that we really could even, you know, it's one thing, I think that the town can have, well, whether is that something we want to deal with?
oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
I
I think let's go down and see if there, and talk about, I'm just suggesting that that's something we might start with just now and see if there are any things on this list that we just plain want to set aside as not,
Does that
not relevant.
happen in other shoreline zoning
What's that?
towns, the
Does it?
noise?
Well, it happens in other municipalities.
Sure.
And I mean, this is a brainstorming thing. I put that, if we want to start with noise restrictions, then I had jotted that down because of the nature of, the lake, you know, growing up on the lake, and then you can hear, we used to, as kids, go out in the middle of the lake and think we were, you know, had privacy, but, our parents could hear everything, from, a mile away, literally.
I mean, some of these kids camps have speakers that blast through the whole
Yes,
Salmon
yes,
Lake.
they sure
You
do.
know, I won't name names, but I think it's ridiculous.
I could not agree with you more about that. I'm on Salmon Lake and I'm well aware of that. And
Right.
the people who hate that, I had to be lucky.
Not
to
their
just-
lake, I mean, they don't own the whole lake.
Yeah, I know, but there are. I don't know that you can, here's someone who would be much more the expert than I certainly would, but I don't know that you can do that as part of the shoreline zoning. You can have a town ordinance
Might be a town.
about noise, but I don't think you can restrict that to shoreline zone. Am I right about that?
Yeah, we have a noise ordinance townwide and enforced by
Yeah.
usually
The
law
police.
enforcement.
Yeah.
And not to mention that my understanding, and again, I came into a little late, but what I was asked about, if I wanted to participate, was more about water quality control and things like that, not so much more general things. So I would say that that's probably, from my point of view, while I might not disagree with it, would not
Be
be
an
one of the things that
ordinance.
we were
Yeah,
tasked with coming up with recommendations.
No, I
particular-
don't disagree with that at all.
I mean, it
So,
could be an ordinance, but we could push
you know,
for it.
the only thing that I would put forward is that the lake shoreland zone is unique compared to the rest of the town. That's what I would, in my opinion, just because the noise carries and, that it could be, we're talking about the shoreland zoning ordinance. I don't know why it couldn't be in there, but I'm not, you know, I don't want to go to the mattresses on this issue, that's for sure.
Well, if you're gonna include the shoreline zone, you might include the lake, as well.
Yeah, I'm not sure that we have jurisdiction over
Yeah, that's true.
behavior on the lake,
That's
per se, but.
Once you get, certainly once you.
But that,
get
I mean,
out to 200 feet,
I sense that we
That's
should
true.
strike that one. Does that seem, anybody wanna?
No, I disagree. I think that
We should put a
one of
star
the
next
major,
to it.
one of the major issues that we've discussed before, and I don't know if there was gonna be some state legislation on it, is the use of fireworks around the lake
Yeah,
and-
that,
and restricting fireworks to certain days, but it's become, at least where I am on Great Pond, and I mean, it's like, it goes on almost every night of the summer.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
it affects wildlife, and I think that it's something that is important.
Well, but that's fireworks, it's not specifically,
Well, it's
a
noise,
noise.
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 That's noise.
Noise.
Well, but.
Many towns have a separate ordinance for fireworks as well.
Yeah, I mean, say in many towns, you cannot,
Right, they eliminate it altogether,
Yes,
some of
yes.
those couple of few
And
holidays.
especially with all the nesting birds we have.
Exactly.
But that's again, I mean, not saying that we can't discuss it, whatever the committee wants to do, it's just not what I was told that we were tasked with, was more about shoreline zoning things with water quality was what they talked to me about in being on the committee, which I'm happy to talk about other things, but
right,
I'm not, do we have a clear direction of what our actual mandate was to come up with? Was it not included of any other types of things? Maybe it's open, I don't know, but
there were, issues that came up with pertaining to one property that were put forward to the select board, and then I believe they said, well, let's take a look at the ordinance. So, and you can certainly make an argument that shooting off fireworks into the lake, over the lake, it affects the water quality. I mean, it's being studied right now, I believe I heard that, so, I mean, I don't think
But
we.
Chris, I don't know what the effect of fireworks are into the lake. What does it do to the phosphorus content of the lake? I mean, that's a situation whether we should, as a committee, decide we should have somebody who knows about fireworks in the lake, and I mean, it could be a whole session or not. It's up to us.
Yeah, and that's a great point, Paul, and I just read something about it, and I can't remember where it was, because I get various publications, but it was something to the effect that it's being studied, the effect on the water quality of fireworks is being studied, so that might be something, so
Well, I think there's
Yeah.
a bill before in Maine legislature dealing with this. I don't know what the status of it is. But I know there's been hearings on this
oh,
because we've discussed this before when we were just the Lake Committee.
We could ask our representative.
I mean, that's, so maybe, to me, it's not a high priority. To me, going back to Chris, I mean, I think hands down, the highest priority is what the BLA's priority is, which is to keep the water quality of the lake
right,
and to deal with the external loading and keep the dirt out of the lake. I mean, so that's what I see as the high priority, which would then lead us to the vegetative buffer.
I would suggest if we go through this list that we've gotten together, the discussion topics and ideas for changes, and decide which of these we think are really high priority, we want to revisit and further discuss.
Yeah.
And which of these that we say, well, we don't really know a lot about the fireworks in the lake, so we need to find a guest
more
speaker
fact
to come
finding
in.
for that,
That might be a way to.
I mean, I think we're gonna have a hard time deciding what is our priorities, because some people want septic.
Yeah.
And now my neighbor, she worked with Messalonsky, Friends of Messalonsky, and she does Lake Smart stuff, and she said 52% of the loading of the phosphate in the lake is from lawns.
it's from lawns, 52% is what
Yeah,
somebody is.
and she says it's documented.
Okay.
That's vegetative buffer.
You don't think?
I think that's vastly,
Because the septic could,
yeah,
the septic could,
yeah.
feed the grass that,
Yeah, well, from lawns is very, very high, but on the other hand, you can't put a number on it because it's gonna vary tremendously from one lake to another, or even from one part of one lake to another.
yeah.
You know,
Yeah, if you had a steep lawn, that might be a lot worse than a rather flat lawn.
Oh, sure, oh, yeah, it's gonna vary a lot, but that number seems very high.
Yeah,
Camp roads and driveways, are probably in general around here, a worse problem than lawns, at least.
What percentage would you say that is?
Well, Charlie Bader, who was in here last time,
right.
put that at somewhere, I think, around, maybe a third, 30 to 40% of the total in camp roads and driveways.
Mhm.
But he had submitted,
Yeah,
he had submitted a list of thoughts, and he had great pond management plan of 2021, estimated watershed phosphorus inputs to Great Pond, Development, commercial, residential driveways, 22%, roads, 17%, septic, 6%, and then other parentheses, timber harvesting, 18%, agriculture, 10%. I don't think that adds up to 100%, but
Is there agriculture anymore?
this is for Great Pond Management Plan. So there seemingly must be, but I mean, that would be another fact finding
That's
thing.
specifically for Great Pond as opposed to Great Ponds.
Right.
Is that what you're saying? That's for.
Well, no, he's saying the Great Pond Management Plan 2021, so it's the management plan for Great Pond.
Okay, yeah.
And that's what I believe he's quoting from. I'm surprised he's not here. We didn't hear from him.
No, he was invited.
Yeah, so we need, further detail on that, further detail on what you had, your contact had quoted, and where does that come from? Where's that documentation? So I think that's
I
part
think
of our.
Messalonsky, friends of Messalonsky did a study of
So they did a
Messalonsky.
study, Messalonsky, well, that would be, so,
In their plan, they just finished the last year, so we should be able to.
Yeah, should be.
so that would be something where if we want to get into vegetative buffer, which I think that comes underneath.
Yeah.
So maybe someone from, Friends of Messalonsky
Yeah.
could come and talk about the research that they.
Yeah,
have.
yeah.
That would be,
Great.
that would be really good.
Yeah, she's my neighbor, she's traveling back to
John.
Massachusetts today, so, yeah,
John, yeah.
yeah. She's adamant that it's, it's a high percentage. Maybe Messalonsky has a lot of lawns, I know, the
Yes,
Sydney side and
Right.
Oakland,
Yeah.
Sydney side has a lot of
right. Well,
lawns.
the one who, and where that would have come from probably would have been Jen Jesperson, who's the consultant on that watershed protection plan.
Mhm.
I mean, that's who they worked with.
If I may interrupt for a minute, as
Yeah.
when I, as a secretary, when I write this and this conversation, this dialogue really is not going anywhere. And that's what I would like to avoid in a meeting is to make some progress in the sense that, we could sit here saying, well, somebody told me it's 20%, somebody told me it's 30%. I mean, it's not going to get us anywhere. What I think we need to do is to follow what Kimberly was talking about, is to take perhaps some votes and grade the priorities of the subject matter. And then we line up people, maybe in a priority, we go and say, okay, we think vegetative buffer is important, or we don't. But maybe we just vote on each item and so make it 1, 2, 3, 4, or in some manner so that we can move ahead on this, because we could sit around and talk about where the grass grows and how the slopes go and what this report and that report, and nothing happens. That's my view.
I think I felt like we're heading towards something, Paul, and that was that vegetative buffer, which encompasses a lot of other issues, was a high priority.
Yeah.
And that, we need to do some fact finding on it.
All right, so then I move that we determine that vegetative buffer is our #1 priority, and that we talk about what experts we need and when we're going to schedule a meeting for that.
Yeah, and then our number 2 should be septics.
I would disagree with that. According to the state of Maine septic systems, because they put out a range that's consistent with what we've heard, but it's 5 to 10%. I think from what we heard before, the roads and the runoff might be the second one, but I'm not saying it's not a pertinent one,
I
but
mean, that
not
means,
2.
you're just saying that 5 to 10% of the septic, if everybody has a brand new
They're saying a
septic,
failed. They're saying
even if
failed.
it's failed,
This is what the article, and we can talk about this at a later date, but
okay?
from the state of Maine, it says failing septic systems are the source of 5 to 10% of the phosphorus reaching lakes. And it does talk later about nitrogen as well, but didn't give a percentage for that.
Failing.
So of the failed ones, it represents that number, which you can, I think every
They're
town.
saying that of the load, the external load, the phosphorus going into the lake 5% they think is
On the low
coming
end.
from,
So I would
Fails.
say-
is coming from septic.
Right.
I mean, I don't,
Well, yes, I mean, you could look at it different ways, but they're specifically saying it's the failed systems that do it. Now, did they give a number of the ones that are working correctly and all of that? No, it's not that. This is just one, and anybody can get it from the state of Maine. It's just, one of the things they put out there for homeowners too, to think about and some suggestions on maintenance and all that stuff. So I'm not saying it's not important.
I know,
Right,
but you're
right.
saying it shouldn't be number two.
I
it should
feel
be
like
number
it's the
three.
roads and some other things
Yeah.
that might be.
Okay, well,
I
I think that's legitimate.
don't know that it's important to go, this is one, this is two, this is three. There are, you know,
They're all. the
three,
same.
four, no, they're not necessarily all the same, but there are certainly 4 or 5 important, fairly important issues. And we have enough time that we can deal with all of them.
Right.
They don't have to be rank ordered exactly
It
so.
might be when we can get the experts in.
Yeah,
You know,
so.
they might not be available.
Clearly, those, well, you know, roads are very important, buffers are very important, septic systems we know are important, and there are a couple of other things that are also important. And whether, how exactly how they rank doesn't really
What
matter.
else besides these three?
well, that's good. Let's,
Yeah.
why don't we go through in order so we don't drive our secretary crazy?
Yeah.
Is that okay? Paul, what do you think? Go in order of
Sure.
the sheet?
I mean, I
That's at least important to talk about.
Just
for-
rank them and.
Right, and
Since we're,
so-
what's the most important?
So I would say, so we got septic system, vegetative buffer. I think restrictions on land with slopes greater than 20%, that already exists in the ordinance, and
Mhm.
I'm not sure that that's something that is
Yeah.
super high priority right now.
Okay, something else that's important, I mean, vegetative buffer, covers the first, 30 feet, give or take, if you're talking about a vegetative buffer back from the shorefront. There's quite a bit about, other things you can do on the property. There's erosion happens all over all over some property. Just because, you may have a fine buffer, but if you have erosion that's further back up, even beyond the shoreline zone, but within the shoreline zone, and you've got runoff coming down in little rivulets beside your buffer and a little stream into the lake, that can completely defeat the whole buffer.
Right, so it doesn't have to be like only the vegetative buffer,
No.
but that category of, might give it a slightly different name to
Yeah.
include some of those things.
Yeah, sure. So, right, the Lake Smart, for example, what John is really big into is not just that buffer, it's the whole property.
Correct.
Okay, so, and that's, you know, so there's more to it than just that.
if we're gonna discuss vegetative buffer, Lenny, who do you think we should have?
Well, I was talking about, Jen Jesperson, who's, I don't know if you're familiar with her,
I am,
she's.
I recommended that she should be, I agree.
Yeah, she would certainly be really good.
How about the Lake Smart people? Anybody from Lake? Smart?
Well, the person who, Tanya is suggesting, is, did I just get your name wrong? No.
Janet,
Huh?
Janet.
Yeah, Jana is really knowledgeable. She would be very good to bring in also.
Who is she, Tanya?
She's my neighbor. She's been with, Friends of Mesalonsky for years, and she does a lot of Lake Smart evaluations.
Oh, great.
And awards people Lake Smart properties and helps them every year to make it a little bit better.
Who's running Lake Smart now in Belgrade?
I think it's Stuart Cole.
Is Stewart and also is Stewart Cole at Seven Lakes, and also, the gal who was just in here our last meeting.
Lynn,
Geiger.
Yeah, Lynn Geiger, the two of them are really running that operation now.
So that's the lineup, I guess. I mean, because some of these interesting suggestions for ordinances, like a sunset unvegetated areas by a certain time. I mean, there's some really creative thinking that's before us. And I'd like to find out from these experts what they think doable.
what did you say about Sunset?
Well, yeah,
It's under vegetative buffer, the last one there.
The grandfather,
Yeah,
it stopped.
saying that, I mean, that's was one opinion, and I might advocate for a more aggressive
Get rid
approach
of
to that. I don't think we have until 2050 to tell you the truth.
But that's the discussion part of these things where we go through.
Right.
You know, it's just like right now, we're just trying to focus some big bullet points and then work through those.
Right, so do we wanna put, so in vegetative buffer, can we also put in tree cutting?
That's a different section. It's,
I think that's a different section with it, you know, you get into
Fern removal for vegetation.
systems and then you have to have arborists come before you and look, as I'm, you know, like,
I think we should put the tree cutting in the,
I sort of see a vegetative buffer and tree cutting being.
We
sort
could
of-
merge it.
yeah. 'cause
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
all part of the same umbrella, yeah.
you know,
Yeah, that's
put it
all
away,
I'm saying.
put it on times,
One topic.
So change
So write
this,
an ordinance,
change this title to vegetative buffer /
wood cutting,
tree
yeah. wood
cutting. You know, so we can merge in all that stuff. Is there anything else?
Because if they cut a tree, they have to plant more trees and they have to lose the roots and all that, so that's.
So then, we could also move in, maintain a photographic record.
Yeah, I think
Wouldn't
that's
that
great.
also go in there?
Yep.
Yep.
In the tree cutting or removal of vegetation, there's a number of steps that.
Right.
That we could maybe improve upon
Mhm.
for code enforcement to look at it before they come.
Well, yeah, I mean,
before they do it.
that's a simplify the rating system.
Yeah.
That's what I think everybody, well, what, I believe Lynn.
Even they said to simplify it.
Yeah. So that's sort of one area. So then there's the,
Yeah, how do you have rules for the road, for the driveways and the roads? How do you do that?
The private roads mostly.
I think, yeah, but if it's outside the shoreline zone, so if it's outside of 250 feet, then, maybe we're not concerned about it until it gets within that. So if there's, I mean, one thought that I would have is, you know, that any sort of a ditch that's running into a stream or right into the lake, that should be dealt with. I mean, I guess that's what's people are thinking that's, roads are very, important, or very,
And that's where I think we definitely have the experts tell us. I just remember that being high on that list.
Yeah.
And I can see where, like, just from our road, you know, where there was a failed, culvert that nobody paid attention to for the 20 years before. And I get there and I'm just tired of it, like, running over. It's like, why can't we fix this, you know? It should have been done a long time ago, because
Right.
instead, everything just shed over it. So I'm not saying this is something we propose, but maybe in that is if you have something that was approved at one time but failed, do we have teeth in our current shoreline zoning to fix it, you know, making it mandatory or not?
make it mandatory.
I'm just, those are examples of things I think we should discuss, not saying we're gonna do.
But was that within 250
Yeah,
feet of the lake?
that one was.
Okay, well, then that should, yeah.
I think so.
Cause you know, a lot of those, I mean, I've seen a lot of them when I was looking for a place, but it's not atypical to see a road that comes down in and then splits off with either a T or an L that runs along the shoreline.
Sure.
And not all of them, but some of them are within that 250 feet.
Sure,
And it's those that may or may not be something we wanna propose,
sure.
at least discuss.
Right.
Yeah.
And then, right, and then one other area that we actually haven't touched on at all is construction zones within the shoreline zone and requirements for keeping a runoff from reaching the lake. And there are best management practices for putting up
It needs silt fence.
silt fences and hay bales and other things. I don't believe that's in our shoreline zone at all.
It is.
It is in there?
Yeah, I had to go through the planning board process, so I know.
Okay.
And there was, you had to, a part of it, is you had to give the plan for that.
Okay.
And then the contractor has to have some number from the state of a certification of knowing how to do it.
Oh, okay, all right, well, fine.
I don't know the exact details of
I
it.
don't remember seeing that, but obviously it's there. All right,
Yeah, every
But-
excavator that works in Belgrade has to be certified and.
very good. That is really crucial for us to do.
So, and we have on our list here is the stormwater quality and phosphorus controls on construction/development. So that was, that came out of, I think, Lynn's and also maybe the, North Pond.
Those are recommendations.
Yeah, it was a.
From the North Pond
there,
study.
Yeah, in that study, it's, so that's, LID, low impact development requirements and, add those standards to the sort of shoreline zone. So I think that's an area that we need to have people come in and talk to us about
Right.
and tell us,
I don't
really,
know what low impact development means.
yeah. So I mean, it says in that recommendation for North Pond, develop a standards manual detailing low impact development requirements, so, okay, great to say that, but yeah,
What does that mean?
how is that done? And,
I sent it out to everybody before when, as part of my input, so you might be able to dig through it.
Well, I think,
It was more like graphs and, kind of, not graphs, but just, methods that you do it, like 6 pages of information. And it showed, step 1, you do this, 2.
oh, okay,
So
I
it,
forget that part of it,
Yeah.
that was pretty big plan, so.
yeah, it's kind of just, I threw it in there because that's what Linda came up with, so.
So who
But I
would be,
think that really shows you we need to bring some people in and go over it with us.
right, so who would be some experts in that area?
Yeah.
Stormwater control, phosphorus controls, construction development.
Do we want to combine the town public works operations in the shoreline zone? Do we want to combine that into this, or is that pretty much a separate thing, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it needs to stay separate.
Okay,
Because we can get, Jason Stevens in. And some of those folks who are responsible for this.
okay, what else do we want to, look into?
Well, one of the areas that Hans talked about was when you have a permit by rule with a DEP, you also need to have perhaps municipal permits, and there needs to be an interface between the DEP permit and the municipal permits.
Yeah, I think Hans had suggested that, and that, you don't just get a permit by rule and call it a day
Yeah.
and rely on that. You also need to involve the, code enforcement officer or the, planning board in that process. So that makes sense to me, I think. So that one, I mean, that's sort of a standalone thing on this list. And I mean, I would like to examine all of the things on this list too. It's just, I guess, where do we start first? And I guess we want to start with vegetative or septic systems or
Who can
something.
we get in to come speak to them might be the
Yeah.
deciding factor, just because
Right,
of their schedule. So I'm perfectly fine with all of them, whatever, I mean, to
yeah,
delve into. But can we get the people in, that's
okay,
I guess maybe what might drive it.
Yeah.
Based on their schedules,
okay,
don't you think? I mean,
yeah,
we might have our priorities of things, and then we can't get those people until later. We don't want to sit there and wait, we just move on to the next.
Get someone our next meeting.
Right.
But a question for Hans, as you look through these, items, Hans, vegetative buffer, stormwater quality, tree cutting and removal of vegetation. I think you've been at it a while here to have pretty good look at what's going on. Do you have any recommendations for us as, because one thing we all thought was that, you know, the point system was way too complicated for me, I looked at it and, yeah, where do you start, yeah?
Yeah, it is very cumbersome because you gotta basically make a site plan with every tree on it, give it a score and then figure out what's coming out. Gather those points, what has to go back in. And then there's, you know, the clusters of how close they need to be and it's like calculus.
Yeah.
And, so I think her recommendation, so, you make it simple, people will be more inclined to follow it,
Right.
you know.
And does our current, well, I know we're getting into discussion, but I'm just curious, does our current ordinance just refer to that state point system? Is that how it's currently worded, do we know?
Yes, I'll have to check the chapter 1000.
Because I read that state one too, and I was like, are you kidding me? I mean, you can hire a forester, I'm sure, who would come in and help with that, but it's very complicated.
People do it and, if it's in chapter 1000, we have to use it. We can get more restrictive,
But
but
not
we
less.
can't get less restrictive. So what we might be able to do is come up with an actual worksheet that people can go from.
Right, no, I get it, it's complicated, but.
Yeah.
What's the purpose behind all the tree cutting ordinances? I mean, in terms of shoreline zoning? Is
Was
it,
to keep root systems in the soils to hold it together. So if you have somebody that lives on a slope and they come in, or even a flat area. That's, you know, near water level and inundates it easily, you want as much hard roots in the soils to hold it together. And around here, especially, we have a lot of sandy soils. Where, you know, you lose a couple trees in the windstorm on the side of a hill and nothing's gonna grow back for like 5 years, because it's sand. So you've gotta wait for the duct to accumulate to have organic matter there for the roots to grow in.
And those trees are also using the phosphorus in the ground
Yeah,
to grow.
And they have a canopy that keeps the water from hitting the ground directly, it's like indirectly, it's slower and.
right, that's why they have the dedicated opening can only be so big.
because the problem that I want to just highlight is that apparently when what I'm trying to remember when all these pines are becoming very mature, and these pines have it fall down and crush houses.
Yeah, I had one, I know.
And my neighbor, as you probably know, Han, lost a house, almost demolished his almost entire house, but one pine tree came down on it.
Sure.
And so how do you allow these pine trees to be cut down protectively so that people's houses don't get eliminated? I mean, how do you make that judgment as a CEO? Do we need to bring in experts in certain situations? Do you need a forester to come in? On some, I mean, how do we utilize professional help in the field? Or is that? Go ahead.
I think of Sebago, there was an article in the paper, Portland paper this winter that said that the same issue, they had to cut a tree down, otherwise it was gonna crash into the house, but they made them keep the roots. And they made them plant 5 more trees.
So Hans is gonna, how do we do it?
Well, having an arborist in shoreline zone is always the best route to take. Get somebody there that knows what they're doing.
Right.
A lot of people want to do their own and they can. The standard rule in the state is you must leave the stump and the roots. You can grind the stump down to the surface, but it stays. With a lot of these blown over trees, well, a lot of the roots are now above the ground. You can't stick them back in, so you cut flush to the ground what's still above. You can remove that. Hopefully, somebody would replant in the hole that was made. And, But to Paul's question, when a large tree like that comes down, what I've been doing is just letting people, because now you're gonna have some light coming in. When you get light, grass is gonna grow, weeds are gonna grow, you're gonna get more growth. Usually where these mature trees are, there's little saplings around that already have little root systems in there. And I would rather see those existing foliage grow, because they've already established some roots.
Right.
Than try to dig a hole and put something new and hope water and hope it grows.
Also grows, yeah.
Mhm.
So I'm call me lenient, I guess, but I like leaving what's there to proliferate by itself. I think it's a healthier forest. You're not gonna introduce anything that shouldn't be there. And,
There's
No.
a big,
And it's-
tension, there's a big tension between people wanting views and we are preserving, dealing with erosion. And how does this, you as a CEO, will you be doing it all every day, running around doing that?
oh, I am. There's a lot of, after these storms, but there's a lot of areas, like you said, they're all mature. Ellis Pond is a great example. That whole shoreline there's a lot of undergrowth, but it hasn't matured because it's choked out. So managing these trees, if there's one that's obviously ill and gonna be coming down in a storm within the next few years, I'd rather them take it out in a controlled manner, not disrupt the soils, and allow these young saplings to emerge. So in
That's
a
what
lot
I
of
thought.
cases, that replanting chart is tossed out the window anyways, because I don't adhere to it.
And I think that, I mean, when I read it, whole chart thing was really, I think, more designed like you're gonna go in and clear some trees out too. Because you're putting in, something gets approved to a new septic design is a good example, modern one versus the old one, you might have to take trees out. When you're going and clearing 10, 15 trees, I think that's where all that point system really pays, or they want you to pay attention to.
Yeah, but if you look close, the storm damage point system is more rigorous
Is it really?
than,
Okay.
than by choice cutting, the plant cutting.
Interesting. Cal.
So Lynn Geiger, couldn't make it today. She sent, us an email on this and, she would like to see an update to 15 parentheses P in the ordinance, saying that no cutting trees or removing undergrowth / organic material without approval from the CEO, excluding 1 6-foot wide meandering path to the lake and pruning the bottom third of tree branches. So that's one of the items that you'd like to see, and also require before and after photographs, which we've talked about, within the shoreline zone, to be able to quantify the 40% in 10 years rule. So that's outside of the 100 feet. That's between the 100 feet and the 250, right?
But that's the total lot, so that would go back to 250 feet. So that would be the entire shoreline zone lot.
Okay.
But there seems to be a stress on the canopy calculations, and I don't understand how that relates to erosion necessarily.
But another thing, Paul, another motivation behind the shoreline zone ordinances that, or the tree cutting, is that somebody's not going to cut the trees so they get a better view and then everybody else gets to look at their house. So there's always been that sort of thing
Right.
around the shoreline that, you want to cut those trees, but people don't want you to cut those trees. So that's part of it, the public benefit of the view
And
looking at your house.
the canopy fall is, to break the fall of the raindrop.
Yeah.
So it's not hitting with the velocity, from 10,000 feet, it'll hit with
Okay.
velocity rolling off a leaf from 40 feet.
All right, I understand that now. Thank you. I suppose it's an example of how complicated, how complex this issue of, of coming up with some regulations for tree cutting is. And,
It's
So, okay, so do we want to pick 3 topics and And then we would come up with a list of people that we want to present facts for us for those three topics, and then we'll, assign people to invite the people to come in, and then if we get shut out on one topic, we can have another topic ready to go. Is that?
Sounds great.
Sound like a
Reasonable.
That sounds a good plan.
So what are our three topics?
Well, I think it,
But we have vegetative buffer and we merged the tree cutting and to maintain the photographic record.
Right.
And we mentioned
Merge
Jen,
that together.
Yeah.
Jesperson and Jana, someone,
Townsend.
Townsend.
Janice,
So-
She'll be here for our next meeting.
Oh, she was planning to come anyway?
No, I'm just saying she's coming back from her daughter's
Ah, okay.
California. Winter.
Berkeley for the winter.
Okay, so, do we want to tentatively try to do vegetative buffer next? And so, and her name again is
Jana Townsend,
Janice Townsend,
Jana,
Jamma.
Janna.
Townsend. I'll ask her.
Okay,
Charlie Bader could make it, it would be very helpful as well, because he
yes,
Yeah,
was very good at, erosion in 319 and
your stormwater runoff, that's one of the specialties in phosphorus control.
okay, so we'll try to get,
and Stuart Cole, we haven't heard from, right?
Yeah, he's kind of tag team with Lynn Geiger and
does he reports to Lynn?
I'm not sure, he's got a number of hats there, but.
Right, yeah, he might be lateral. So we're gonna, I can reach out to Charlie Bader and see if he can make it the next time.
What's the date next time?
That's 2 weeks from today, right, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, so whatever that is.
23.
23rd.
Oh, and that's the 23rd, yeah, I will not be here.
Me either.
I will be recovering from my hip replacement, so maybe somebody else could, take over for
I can get Jana to take my place.
that. Okay, I just need somebody to lead the meeting.
Nice.
Anybody? Pat?
Yeah, Lenny and I
Hip,
was
huh?
Okay,
Hip replacement, oh my gosh.
so who else do we want to talk about? Vegetative buffer, tree cutting, photo record. I got Jana Townsend and Charlie Bader. Do we want to, see if Lynn
Jen
can make it?
Jesperson. Jen Jesperson.
Jen Jesperson? And who can talk to her?
Who knows Jen Jesperson? You do, Lynn?
Yeah, I haven't talked to her in a number of years, but I know her.
Okay,
Can see if I can hunt up her email address. I'll ask, I can't guarantee she'll come, she's pretty busy and she's a self-employed, environmental consultant, so she may have looked at it as,
She works with KV Conrad too.
oh, does she?
Yeah,
Oh,
I
I
had a
didn't know
meeting
that.
with her the 24th, and I think the 23rd, she was available. I think in the afternoon. So I just saw her schedule today.
You just saw her schedule,
That's
really?
convenient.
No kidding. So she's actually, on the payroll, so to speak, of KV Cog?
I believe so.
Okay.
So I think, yeah, Tuesday afternoon. She's got availability.
well, that works.
Yeah.
After, well, okay.
So
Well, that's a
call
good
her-
example
call her
of
before she books
Get it
up.
when you can.
Yeah,
Yeah, well, I don't have her phone number, but I have her.
I've got him on the phone. And I got an email.
Well, I have her, I should have her email on my computer, so I'll just shoot her an email this evening.
Actually, what's the name of her? She has a company, Echo Environment.
Ecological Instincts, at least it was, I think it still is.
Do we want to lump restrictions on land with slopes greater than 20% in with this? Or do we want to,
Yeah,
strike that, or that's something we want to touch on this next meeting?
Well, that's already classified as a resource protected slope district.
Yeah,
It's
so
got its
that,
own-
it's already, I mean, I put it in there because I think I saw it in the North Pond, management plan, and I know I'd seen it in the ordinance, but, I guess the question is it adequate, is our ordinance adequate for, for
Section 15 at the very last, I think it's X in section 15, the very last little subsection. And basically, you're not allowed to cut, or, I mean, it is very restrictive, and we've made it more restrictive than the state, because most of our slope district is sandy.
Yeah.
It's very sensitive.
So is that something we should keep on a list of topics to discuss, or is it already as tight as it should be, or we want it to be?
Well, it's on the list, so probably everybody should review it and have an opinion. You know, look,
I guess who would, Jana and Charlie and Jen speak to that, or is that a foreign thing on this? Should that be lumped in with vegetative buffer, tree cutting, photo record, or is that something?
I think Charlie can speak to it because, you know, it is more of a sensitive runoff situation.
Yeah,
You know, you get more velocity occurring with driveway runoffs. Actually, I was talking to Stuart today about a situation where there is a driveway steep, straight, and headed straight towards the lake. They've got a few razor strips in there, but I just don't believe, I can't, when I saw it, I couldn't believe it was a driveway. But there was a vehicle at the bottom, so someone drove down it. I wasn't gonna.
okay, so we'll put that in, and where was
On Foster Point.
that?
Foster Point was, where's it?
Great
Where past Christie, the first road goes off.
Oh, yeah,
okay.
Into
The
the
nightmares.
So,
Okay.
yeah, we're nightmares on maybe.
Yeah.
Very steep.
okay,
We want to look to another group or set of topics that we can come up with, folks, and try to get that scheduled for the next meeting after the 23rd.
sure.
That way we just give people more time, that's what I'm thinking.
So what do we have now for the 23rd? Is it vegetative buffer, stormwater quality?
Yeah, I have vegetative buffer slash tree cutting slash photo record slash runoff. And that also includes, that includes other areas, and then the slopes greater than 20% is also part of that, so that's. sort of
I think
one-
you should eliminate tree cutting and have a separate session on that. I think it's gonna take some time. And there's experts, you can bring in some arborists and
Well, we-
native notions. Get 3 or 4 experts just on dealing with erosion control with the trees. Under that would also probably be photographic record. How we do that.
I mean, you can't have a buffer zone unless you have it has some teeth about trees.
Yeah, I mean, we may separate that out after the fact, but maybe we want to start with who we have, and then if we have more fact finding for tree cutting by itself, then we get into arborists, unless we want to invite them to this, but it seems like,
I think that's gonna be too many experts.
Was that?
I think if we had arborists, I think we're gonna have too many experts trying to
not,
knowledge
yeah.
transfer.
Have enough time in an hour to, that's why I think it should be separated. But it's up to you, Chris.
I don't know, it's up to the committee.
I think we should leave it together and then we can, as we
And then
become more knowledgeable.
Yeah, see where we are, and then, if we have to do a deeper dive into tree cutting with arborists as a separate topic, let's do that. But I think we want to start out, Paul, with sort of trying to group some of these things together if possible.
And if they cut all the trees, then that's no buffer zone.
Yeah, I
And
mean,
when,
that's-
when there's an expert here or somebody who's knowledgeable.
Yeah.
It's not like we're gonna be necessarily like coming up with our recommendations right there. We're really just getting information from.
Yeah,
And then we're taking notes, and then we're going through it probably at a later date. I mean, depending on time. So I feel like if we can get people here, let's get them here and talk to them and
get the.
get the information,
Right.
take notes and.
Based on our meeting, last meeting, it's better maybe not to have too many people at
Fair enough.
once.
Yeah.
Because then I think they tend to feel like, I'm just like one of 3 or 4 of you, like. They're not using my time well. I feel like, for example, I don't think George Seal felt like we were using his time
No,
well. I think he kind of made that plain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, we should only have 1 or 2 people at a time.
He also had a conflict of interest with the
Yeah.
planning board, and he was probably overextended to start getting into every 2 weeks, an hour and a half, plus homework, so.
Oh, I understand that.
Yeah.
No, I don't know that we were expecting him to join the committee or anything like that, but I think he was I think he was a little bit annoyed that we invited him and it wasn't just all about him. That was my sense,
Maybe.
or it wasn't mostly about him. He was just one of, I think, 2 different people here.
Well, I think that was, we were, the select board, had directed us to work closely with the planning board. So that was our effort to do that, and
as I say.
then I think we've reassessed and doesn't make sense, so at that level, so.
I got a question for Hans, just on vegetative buffer. The recommendation we have is require vegetative buffer of between 330 feet or 100 feet from all properties.
Well, it just
So that means,
require a buffer, and one suggestion to me was 100 feet and one was 30 feet, so put them both in, so.
they're good, I just.
Yeah.
This would be something we're gonna add on to the ordinance, because it doesn't have that now, does it? You don't have to create one if you don't have it. So you add along to the water.
Well, it depends on what you bought, when you buy, let's just say an unimproved piece of land, period.
Yeah.
The closest 100 feet is supposed to be your buffer,
Yeah,
and you don't cut other than a hazard tree.
Yeah.
Or your 6-foot meandering path. So that would be, you don't touch it, it is a buffer.
Right.
But if you buy it and, there's an existing cabin that you're gonna expand on. Well, it's what you bought, what's already cleared, the cabin area, I know one situation where someone bought a cabin, they wanted to have it rebuilt on the footprint. The contractor came in, gung ho, knocked down the cabin, didn't get a permit. So guess what? The cabin created an open space that they have a wonderful view looking over where it used to be. And they had to build back at 100 feet.
Right.
So you end up with a big lawn space. And I think what's more important than trying to regulate grass is regulate the use of chemicals. If you put sunlight in, you're gonna get weeds, you're gonna get some growth. People are gonna wanna trim it. But they don't have to fertilize it. So I would think all fertilizers should be prohibited
yeah.
across the board.
There is a state law, which I did not understand or know, but the Friends of Messalonsky, they did it in a friendly manner. They sent it out to folks who subscribe to the newsletter. And I wasn't using it anyways, but it was interesting that I don't know but it's very short. It's like the state law, there's some state law they referenced and it's like 50 feet or something, no fertilizers or anything. I didn't know the law existed.
Bath.
But it was some amount. I don't remember how much. But
Bath has got in trouble, but then they pulled back and refired, I think we'll put in a no chemicals period in the town.
yeah.
So, and it got down to, well, you can't even use an off-load spray, it's chemical. Cleaning products, were supposed to be taken off the shelf. I mean, it's just, it was like where, it was too broad of a
Right.
concept, but.
Now, what Charlie Bader claims, or I shouldn't say claims, but believes that, there is a significant amount of phosphorus that is descending from the sky in either in the form of dust or in the rain. That's coming from tall smokestacks, mostly from utilities in the Midwest. And that's, you know, getting on lawns and, on the canopy and other places, and, you know, when, you know, with the rain and so forth, and when you have lawns and then without buffers and such, and then anything that's washing into the lake is carrying that phosphorus as well as anything that we are putting onto the lawns or any erosion that is being caused. So that's what he believes. I'm not sure what the basis of that belief
A
is.
mowed lawn is a lousy
Right.
preventative barrier.
Right,
to-
right, exactly. So, right, so what he was saying, what he says is that even if you're not putting chemicals on, and even if there's no erosion, just this stuff falling from the sky, well, first of all, some of it falls into the lake directly, obviously. And, it falls onto the.
Hello? I just lost you. Hello?
That acid has been
No,
neutralized
they-
locally. It used to be a lot worse than it is
Right.
now. I don't know you know, how, I mean, there are lots of lakes in the Northeast back in the seventies and eighties that were so acidified that a lot of the fish and other aquatics died.
And there's mercury.
Because there were no scrubbers.
There's mercury and heavy metals that
There's
are,
lots of mercury. There, yeah,
that are in this smoke, in the atmosphere, coming down,
Oh,
and so
yeah.
then you get mercury that.
yeah, I mean, there are
accumulates
advisories,
in the
I don't know if you know, there's a statewide advisory in Maine against eating too much of the fish that's
Right.
caught in the lakes and streams because of the mercury that's coming primarily from these smokestacks. And Charlie says there's also phosphorus in those smokestacks that's coming. I don't know if he's right about that, but I suspect, you know, he generally knows what he's talking about.
Again, that's kind of where we want experts, because I tend to deal in facts as much as they're known, and they're not always known completely, right? I mean, sometimes you just can't know. But before I would start debating something too much, I want to get as much information as I can of the facts that are known. And then have these debates of what might make
Well,
sense in an ordinance for a
Yeah.
potential solution, or
Facts
at
can
least
always
help.
be, facts can always be,
Alternate
Looked at-
facts, I mean.
looked at in
Cherry
different
picked, cherry
ways.
picked out, sure.
You check the sources, you know, I've got some information from New Hampshire and Maine's versions, and they, you know, on certain things, and they seem to agree on a lot of it, but I'm sure we could go to other places and get different opinions that they say are facts from their studies.
Right.
But at least gather as much of that as we can,
Sure.
you know.
And stick through it ourselves.
He's resigned from trade just for health reasons and. You're welcome to sign it if you want.
Yeah. Christian's point, facts about what enters the water and where. You know, we're focused on shoreline zone, but there's a lot of water that does run off properties that are not in shoreline zone,
Tons.
that they end up very rapidly and very dirty in shoreline zone water.
Absolutely.
And you go up and look. The properties on West Road, that's all a hill coming down. And, I've got to have a conversation tomorrow with a landowner whose silk fence is falling. But it's not falling because of water leaving his property, it's from water actually entering his property. So there's a drainage situation that this problem, they need to, it needs to be addressed. The water doesn't care who owns the land.
Right, right. So are there things that we could do downstream, basically, you know?
Well, you're concerned about fertilizers. One of the largest masses of grass in this town uses a lot of fertilizer.
Yeah,
Right,
exactly.
You talking about the Alphonse or?
golf course.
Golf.
Yeah.
Oh, the golf course, oh. Does that wind up in a lake?
Yes,
Absolutely.
yes.
Oh, it does.
In one way or another, I would think, and again, I don't have the facts, I would ask an expert better, but seems to me if it's, that when I look at these last storms with all that water running, that water comes from somewhere and it went through somebody's lawn, wherever. I mean, it's carrying some of those nutrients. It just seems like it would be. But we were tasked with this shoreline zoning, which is the 250 feet, right?
Yeah.
But I feel like maybe there's some other things that should be addressed, but that wasn't what I was asked. I mean, I have opinions on some of that. But I think fertilizer is a big issue, everywhere, I mean. And that, by the way, is consistent with different states. When you look at what they put out for keeping your lakes clean, that always comes up as one of those, is fertilizer,
Yeah.
fertilizer.
Phosphorus.
Yeah.
And it's not just the lawns on the lake, it's most of
Right.
these people are smart enough or.
They're not doing it.
And they don't, most, you know, and
Well, it's not all.
they've got it in the water source, well, the water's gonna push that grass up, they don't want fertilizer, they're gonna cut it more.
So. but
I
it-
doubt that all fertilizer is the same. And I mean, that's again a complex question. You're gonna have to get into the chemical content of different fertilizers. And how are you
they
gonna,
talk about that.
how are you ever gonna enforce kinds of rule that says you can't use fertilizer?
Towns have done it,
Nothing that promotes growth, I guess you have to say that.
municipalities have done it,
Yeah,
What's that?
municipalities have done it, the town of Bath did it,
How do you do it?
they made a local ordinance.
Like I
And
said,
how do you as a CEO determine
Oh.
whether it's fertilizer in the lawn? You're gonna go have a chemical analysis done of the lawn? Before you,
They couldn't, sell it for one, they had to pull it out of the stores, had to take it off the shelves, Ace Hardwares were furious.
So we're getting near
Yeah, we're getting close to our time. I think, you know, Paul, one of the ways that the shoreline zoning ordinances has been enforced is by neighbors turning you in, basically, you know.
that's a great life. That's a great neighborhood.
that's too
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we saw that right next to my brother-in-law's property where somebody built a cantilevered permanent dock right on the point next door. It's just like, you know, so my brother-in-law called Gary Fuller and said, hey, look, that's not allowed. Gary said, thank you very much, and they took it down. So, I mean, so part of that would be if you've got, you know, if you're obviously using fertilizer, I would imagine that maybe somebody's gonna tell the code enforcement officer and they're gonna have a conversation with you, but, you know, a lot of it's education as well, I mean.
I think education, I wrote that down as one of my topics,
Yeah.
is I learned that even, and I didn't know this, but through reading this, is, different material, is that they're talking about even just the leaves that you know, rake up and blow around with your leaf blower in the fall. Yeah, lots of leaves fall in the lake, but I actually never gave it a second thought that I'm blowing my leaves off my lawn and they're going into the lake. Actually, that's probably not a good thing. Pull them back and push them up in the backwoods. I didn't know that. That's an education thing.
My wife is, she, actually this afternoon, she went out on her e-flow, electric surfboard,
Oh, she did?
basically. She did, she had her dry suit on and she was, our dock isn't even in, but, she goes around and she has seen, large quantities of of grass clippings blown into the lake. You know, so
I knew
that,
that one you shouldn't do, right? Cause
I
it
mean-
makes sense, but the leaves are like, oh, they're falling anyways,
yeah,
right?
so, but it could be the lawn service of a company that's doing that, so, you know, but it has to start with the owner and the education.
Education, I think, is important. Unfortunately, I'm not sure we're gonna direct that with an ordinance, but
You know, BLA and Seven Lakes Alliance are doing a bunch of that. so-
Information messages.
Okay, so 10 minutes to go. So, we've got it fleshed out, so we're, inviting, Jenna and Charlie and Jen to, the next meeting. We just, do we want to just caucus amongst ourselves if one or more of these people can't make it that we have a substitute? Do we wanna do that, or do we wanna say, let's also start naming names on septic system or stormwater quality, phosphorus controls and construction development? Do we wanna do something else? What do you guys think?
We could name names for septic. Couldn't we?
Sure. We wanna get into, we've already had a discussion of septic, but we haven't really gotten into special rules and certification and stuff. Do we want to do that? Does that make sense? Do we talk about septic as well, deeper dive for a second, or is there another topic that we think you wanna?
I think we cover them all, well, once we talked about, it. I think that one's something that should be discussed and, having expert opinions and what they think is helpful. I wouldn't want to start up, for me anyways, to start coming up with recommendations to make all kinds of changes and not know that it really will have a positive impact.
Well, making decisions with imperfect information, that's I think I took a course on that, but, the issue there is that Charlie said in the last meeting that they don't have, a lot of data as to what a normal septic system does, because they haven't had the funding to do that.
And I don't know of any others. I mean, the state of Maine does have their thing, but they don't say where their source is. Well, they name the people who it looks like were the consultants, but doesn't give a ton of details on where they came up with their percentages.
Right.
Well, Jen Jesperson might be able to speak to that. a little bit.
Well-rounded.
She's into the soils environment, and unfortunately, shoreline zone does not include a lot of septic rules. The septic rules are a separate set of rules put forth by the state in the subsurface wastewater. Their setback for septic fields from the lake is 100 feet. They consider a septic field construction, just like the house would be. So it's gonna be, even though it's not hard surface, it's gotta be 100 feet back if possible. Variances are available if you can't meet that 100 feet. Or the field needs to be of a size, a replacement field has to be a certain size and it's gonna overlap some. So there's variances. Your requirements for certifications, they're either certified that they're functioning or they're not. And so an inspection, and I'd almost say that you do annual inspections of all commercial or rental properties. Is what suggests when I saw that, I'm like, it sounds good on paper, but really you should go after the annual inspection of commercial rental properties. Those are your higher use properties,
So
more likely to fail.
Hans, you're saying that that's something we should consider as a,
Yeah, I would find a way to put inspections into it, but
oh, yeah.
but you're not gonna be able to do a lot as far as changing the regulations.
Okay, so,
The regulations are on the plumbing regulations, Hans? The plumbing?
Yeah, the subsurface wastewater.
It's not on the plumbing code.
so is there anything preventing, considering that the shoreline zone is special, for lack of a better word, it's special versus somebody off of Route 27 with of 10 acres and no streams nearby. Is there anything preventing us from including, specs or something in the shoreline zone?
Well, when I read this,
Which one?
change specs to improve phosphorus protection.
Yeah, that came up in the last meeting that they.
That's because there was an experiment using alum in the
Right.
field
Yeah,
bed down at Seven Lakes
Seven
Alliance. They've got two fields, one with, but they've never tested them since they've been put in. They really don't know.
So they don't know whether that was effective or
Yeah.
not.
I was visited with them today, and we talked about
Redoing it.
the grant money ran out, so the study stopped. Right. But this is the science that we really wanna know, especially for in the village where you got a lot of land, and a lot of use, and it's getting saturated more
Yeah.
every year.
Sure.
So let's finish the project, find the science, and see if we can apply it usefully right here at home.
How do they do that in that strip of land? They have to pump them all the time?
I think there are a few holding tanks. I don't know. I haven't studied every property. I'm not-
It's a treatment,
which-
tier 3 treatment is what they have.
They have a pre-treatment. It's
It's
an
an
engineered
oxygen
system.
tank.
That's Seven Lakes, that's Seven Lakes.
Yeah, but what about all the houses
What
along
about
there?
the other houses?
No, not that I'm aware of anybody having that.
So there's no sewer that runs through there?
No, we don't have a system in Belgrade, not a town system for that.
Right, I mean, that's an extreme example of
High density, no land.
no land, high density,
Sure, they're all on wells and they all have these septic systems like jammed in together.
Yeah. When I first started, I went and visited Anthony and asked for a tour to see what it is.
Yeah.
Because that was the first engineered system I'd ever seen. And we talked about the holding tanks, how often they pump it and the two fields, but unfortunately, again, we don't know what the outcome is. There's no soil sampling done, no water sampling done to see, if there's anything leaching, what the different leaches might be.
right?
So, I mean, there's a lot of potential science there available to us.
Hans, I did speak to Pete Callen last week about that. And we're gonna try to restart that, so we wanna get you involved in, I guess with some grant money that could be used to.
So Seven Lakes can look at their system,
Yeah.
but we have nothing,
And see which system is works the
Everybody
best,
else
is that what it is?
So, to line a bed with alum was very expensive,
yeah.
number one.
And it gets used up.
Exactly.
There's a lifespan of some.
So now you're gonna require every 10 years they go through this added expense.
And you're really
And it's
just,
on the bottom, so they have to dig the whole thing up?
Exactly.
and you're just binding the phosphorus in place and, so it's not going anywhere. It's
Right.
just
But let's just
unable
say,
to leave.
let's just say the whole village is on ledge and there's only 20 feet of soil.
Which is probably true.
So do you require every 10 years you dig out the dirt and go bring in the new? Well, you're bringing in nice fresh phosphorus and dumping it there and planting grass over it or whatever, putting a hard driveway on top of it or whatever the situation is, they're very limited in space. I don't really,
There's something to be learned by just looking how that, just the treatment tank alone there removes phosphorus. Versus the regular pump, it goes right into the tank and, sits around and then, does it by, just disintegrates on its own, it's used up by microbes, but this is by moving oxygen around, it changes, it speeds it up. And if you take the water that's coming out of that tank, it looks like light tea, no odor, nothing. If you get a cup of water out of a septic tank, you're not gonna put it up to your nose, so something's happening there that's removing a
Yeah,
lot of that material.
but
Well, but phosphorus doesn't go any, it doesn't,
Yeah,
there's still phosphorus in it, because it's
Right.
still, phosphorus doesn't go anywhere.
no, it's
yeah,
gotta go in, but,
all right. So we're out of time.
Yeah.
So I think we have one topic for next time, which would be the vegetative buffer tree cutting.
Yeah.
And then we'll have to have another meeting to talk about what comes next.
Yeah.
So I won't, once again, I won't be at the next meeting, but, so you'll talk about the next step after that.
so our next meeting will be number 1, vegetative buffer.
Yep.
Is stormwater number 2 or part of number 1?
I don't know that we've determined that yet.
Yeah. So maybe we'll just. And this is,
I think you need to move. Septic is, I'm think it's very important, but I don't think it's much we can do as a committee relative to the shoreland zoning ordinance. From what I understand, Hans is not, it's really not that bailiwick. It's
Or we could require, inspections if a place was sold or just passed on to another family member. We could
That's-
require
that's
that
a-
to be.
Tanya, that's a
doable.
different deal. That's not under the shoreline zoning ordinance.
It isn't,
For which thing?
the septic to be inspected if.
Oh,
If it.
Requires all shoreline properties in the state of Maine are supposed to be inspected when they're.
When you're selling,
When they sell.
or transfer, but we don't say transfer, I think it's
But
just sell.
if we wanted to have all septic systems within the shoreline zone inspected on a regular basis, say once every 3 years, 4 years, or 5 years, would that go in the shoreline zone, or would that be a separate?
I don't see
different
why it would.
I
ordinance?
think it would be
I
short.
mean, unless somebody tells me you can't do it, I would assume we're gonna try to put it in the.
Yeah, so in that case, I would say we definitely should look at it, because that seems to me like.
That's the
something we
case. I
want.
agree. I agree. I would really work.
Regular septic maintenance advises having a tank pumped
Yeah.
every 3 to 5 years
Yeah.
regardless of use.
Oh, of course,
So at that time,
yep,
and the town could require proof
Yes.
of service.
yes, proof of service.
Proof of service, that's.
Servicing the tank and inspecting the system are not the same thing.
No, they're not,
So
but we could, I guess,
require both. Once, a minimum of once every 3 years.
yeah, I don't know, shoot for the stars and see what happens. See where we end up.
Yeah, within the shoreline zone. Yeah.
Right.
I know it never passed townwide, but it might pass for the shoreline zone.
No, and I don't think it would be appropriate to try to pass it townwide, you know, it's, so we're thinking that that's another, inspection.
You can even limit it to, you can limit it to the high impact soils, low
Yeah.
impact.
well, again, I think again, for me, I want to know more facts, and so forth before I would start actually making recommendations if it's 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, or at all, right?
Well,
But-
there's a gentleman, his first name is Dave or David, and Roke, yes, who's a real expert on this, and he's someone who I believe, and he likes to talk about it very much. So he's someone who we could definitely have in.
So,
I know him pretty well.
Yeah,
So, okay, yeah,
Having somebody in is good.
yeah, he's very good. I actually have,
ROCHE.
and I have some good written, materials. It's actually a chapter in a book that's really excellent, describing septic systems and issues on septic systems in shoreline zone. And I could, not quite sure what the copyright issue is, but it's one chapter in a book, and I think you're allowed to copy that and send it around.
He's
So
got
I
some,
Copy that
Lenny,
and-
he's
and
written
send it
some
around
stuff up
electronically.
too. Lenny has, Dave has prepared some written material.
Okay,
We
yeah,
can get ahead of time.
yeah.
so it would be, David, and then, maybe, would you think Jen Jefferson, was that the other one that would,
Well, we can talk to her about it when she's here with, on buffers if she.
okay.
I would
We
get
get it.
somebody from North Pond who would they were very involved in the septic issues. Somebody from.
Most of
the
the,
Lake
most of the
Association.
staff was Seven Lakes and, you know, some of the other hired experts.
So somebody from Seven Lakes as well.
On the septic stuff.
Yeah.
Um,
Who would be the right person at 7LA?
pardon me,
Who would be the right person at 7LA?
Charlie Bader.
Charlie or Lynn, this is same folks, Charlie or Lynn, probably.
Lynn, do you think would, Lynn, I mean, I think had expected Charlie to be here, at our meeting, so, cause I think he's got such a great background for this,
He knows a lot about.
all this sort of stuff, so.
Charlie knows a lot about it. He and I have worked on it for a lot of years and trying to put a database together.
But we could add in Lynn to that.
Yeah, I imagine that Danielle Wayne, who's the lake scientist, probably knows a fair amount as well. But I shouldn't speak for her.
Right.
I'm sure she knows a fair amount, whether she knows enough that we would want to have her in. You know, as an expert, I don't know.
Okay. All right, all set?
Yeah. So I guess, just to see what our next steps are, we've got people making calls to,
Yeah, I'll let you know about Jen. I'll get an email to her, as soon as I can.
I'll follow up with Charlie and Steve.
I'll follow up with Lloyd.
okay, good, and just share it with the Chris and.
Yeah.
And then that was a good start, it's a bumpy road to kind of, yeah, it's a broad subject, we're trying to focus on.
Yeah,
This
we're
is a-
getting,
Yeah, it's a
we're
good,
getting close.
it's a
A
good,
little more focused, yeah.
a little more focus, it's good, good job, Chris, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The first one is your surgery.
Week from no, 2 weeks from yesterday, so the 22nd.
Oh, so yeah, just right before, yeah.
Yeah.
I guess you won't be in.
You
Well,
guys
that's a
will be
lot.
in the hospital, maybe?
No, it's outpatient.
Yeah,
Yeah, amazing, huh?
It is, yeah, looking forward to it.
Oh, yeah.
Which hip?
Right here, yeah. But we'll see.
Important.
It's a family tradition.
Yeah,
Yeah, down in Scarborough, actually, Scarborough Surgery Center.
Yeah, they good down there.
Oh,
Good luck,
well,
Chris. One question,
Yeah,
what about replacing Michael Barrett?
What's that?
What about,
Oh, replacing Michael, yeah.
I think he's irreplaceable, don't you?
yes, there's not, that,
well, I phrased it poorly.
Yeah.
You're
What are we gonna get?
Yeah, that's a good
Yeah.
question.
think about it, you
I'll
know,
think about it, see.
Yeah, he was an at-large. No, he was not representing Orange.
yeah.
Who was he representing? Was it large?
It's not representing.
What was that, Paul?
He was at large, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, thank you all.
All right, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. Denise.
Do we have to adjourn?
Yes, so we need a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?
Vote to adjourn, all in favor?
Vote with your feet.
Yeah.
Nay, nay, nay.